Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Soul and Scream. In this particular video, I am going to be doing a review on Tyler Perry's Zatima, Season 2, Episode number 9. It is titled The Dinner Diagnosis, so let's just get into it. So, first off, let me just say that this episode, it was kind of fast moving in regards to the different things that needed to happen, but it wasn't like a loaded episode. It had like some very key points. But anyway, let me just get into it. So last episode, we left off where Zach was outside waiting for kind of waiting for Dr. Reed to come so they can all have dinner. And he had just basically dismissed Deja, after she said she was about to come after Fatima and stuff like that. So anyway, this episode picks up where Zach is standing outside and Dr. Reed pulls up and he gets out of the car and he's like, hey, I'm looking for Angela. And he's like, oh, she here, she inside. And he goes, okay. So Zach and him, do the little introduction things. They end up talking about each other's cars and stuff like that. And basically, Dr. Reed asks Zach, you'll drive it after work, dinner or something. And he's like, nah, I'm good. And so he's like, oh, so you're not really trusting. And so Zach was like, yeah, not really. But, also Dr. Reed introduced himself just as Jackson, not like Dr. Jackson Reed. So Zach doesn't at this point know who he is. And so anyway, they go in. Zach, Fatima, and Angela are having a conversation. And when they walk in, the first thing that Angela says to Dr. Reed is, hi, I'm Angela. And they introduce themselves to each other. Well, Zach is already, not in the mood. And so he peeping game, right? And he's like, what's going on? He's like making these faces. And he's like, because now he realizes that that's not really Angela's friend, which remember Angela, when she asked Zach, about dinner, she said, can me and my friend and Bryce come over? So he's already kind of like knowing something is wrong right there. So Fatima basically introduces herself to Dr. Reed, again, trying to play everything off. And, so she goes, you guys, let's go ahead and eat. Basically, let's go to the table. So when they all walk to the table, Zach grabs Fatima and he's like, what's going on? She don't even know that dude. And Fatima's like, babe, just leave it alone. And let's just go help me bring the food to the table. And so they walk off and that happens. The scene picks up basically where everybody is at the table and they are just, having a pretty good time except for Zach. And you can tell he's just sitting back and he's kind of stewing and stuff like that. But he's looking like at everybody at the table kind of sideways and stuff like that. And so, just kind of peeping that something is up. And so, they end up kind of laughing and stuff. And so Fatima, actually, Dr. Reed kind of is like, you kind of quiet over there, Zach. And he was like, yeah, I got a lot on my mind. And so Bryce goes, yeah, we got, some business, some stuff going on at work. And so Dr. Reed is like, oh, y'all work together. And Zach was like, not for long. And Bryce kind of looks at Zach like he ain't never heard him say that. But he the one that, let me put a pin right here. He's the one that actually told Zach, like, if you want to, part ways after this deal, then we can. And now he's like acting like he ain't never heard that Zach don't want to work with him no more. So anyway, picking up. And so Zach basically is like, so you kind of nosy, basically, you know what I'm saying, to Dr. Reed. And he was like, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm really kind of inquisitive by nature and stuff. And so, Fatima kind of tries to play things off and she's like, who else wants some wine? And so she tops everybody off. And Zach is like, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm about to go to bed. And she's like, Zach. And he's like, nah, I'm cool. And so, Bryce tries to get up and he's like, okay, cool. And he just downs his drink and he's like, okay, let's go. And Angela dang near, pulls him down and makes him fall in his seat, to stop him from leaving. And Fatima, of course, is noticing like Zach is picking up stuff. So she finally is just like, forget it. Like, this ain't working. And so she's like, Zach, I invited Dr. Reed over here. He's not a friend of Angela. He's a therapist that helps Black men. And so Zach is like mad, right? And Dr. Reed is just sitting there listening. And so he's like, so, you tricking me? And so she was like, no, Zach. And he was like, yeah, so you tricking me. She was like, well, no, I'm just trying to get, trying to help. And he was like, oh, so I'm the one that's the only one at this table that needs some help. And so Angela is kind of like, well, no, Bryce needs some help. And Bryce is like, what I do? And so she's like, are you serious? You going to try to kiss Zach and, all this kind of stuff. And I thought you was straight. So obviously something is basically up. So she's like, Dr. Reed, what you think about, a man who's supposed to be, with a woman, and he goes and tries to kiss another man. And so Dr. Reed is kind of like, he don't say anything. And so, he goes, so Zach is like, so what is this, like an intervention? And he's like, and Fatima's like, well, no. And he's like, yeah, it's, you trying to, this is an intervention. She goes, no, Zach. And he talks to Dr. Reed, and he's like, so, and what kind of dude is you that just sit here at the table and, don't introduce yourself as a real doctor and everything? And so, Fatima's like, Zach, don't get mad. And he's like, no. And so, she's like, it's somehow she goes, Angela comes in and she's like, well, why y'all kind of get it together and stuff, let me go ahead and get my stuff situated, basically. So she's like, Zach, Bryce, basically she's like, Bryce, Fatima told me that you tried to kiss Zach, and, and he's like, so she's like, I want to know what's going on, basically. And so Zach is like, I'm out of here. And she's like, Zach, no, wait a minute. Like, I'm trying to figure out what's happening and what's going on. And so she's like, Belinda mentioned. And so Fatima and Zach both was like, that's the wrong name to be mentioned in here. And she was like, listen, I'm just saying that she was just saying I need to figure out what's going on. And that's what I'm trying to do, basically. And so Bryce is kind of like, so we gonna do that here? And so she was just like, well, they gonna tell me anyway, because and so he goes, all right, so check this out, Angela, this ain't really about you, this is about me. I thought Zach was making a move on me, and I'm kind of like into swinging type of situations, and I was hoping that well, he was like, Zach, I thought he was coming on to me. And so Zach, snaps because he's tired of that, being, Bryce's reasoning. And so he's like, I don't know why you keep thinking that. He was like, I told you, because Angela was like, oh, because he said he wanted to marry you. And so Zach is like, I said his brain and Fatima's body, like, quit not saying that. And then he looks over at Dr. Reed, and he was like, and basically, don't be looking at me like that. And Dr. Reed is like, I'm not judging. And so he goes, listen, Bryce is like, listen, I was hoping that, maybe me and you could basically swing with Zach and Fatima. And so Zach and Fatima looking like, what? Like, listen, we sleep with each other and we ain't even doing that right now. And Fatima was like, right. And Zach looked at her like, for real? Like, that's what we do? And so anyway, so Angela eventually kind of is like, so are you gay? And he was like, Angela, like, I don't really like labels. And so Angela was like, well, listen, I do. You look at me, like, everything I got on is a label, and this and this and this. And so he's like, you know what? This is not you. You a fetish basically to me. And she snaps, and she was like, no, you didn't call me no mother effing fetish. And he's like, no, like, I need to, big women, plus size women are just something that I need. And so he's trying to explain himself. But at this point, Angela is completely offended. And so, so she's like, I'm about to go. And so Fatima's like, no, you're not about to go. Like, you've had too much drink. I'll take you home. And so she's like, okay, well, can we go? And so Fatima's like, no, not yet. And so Dr. Reed finally chimes in, and he's just like, you know what? Let me chime in. And he was like, let me just tell you what's going on right here. And this is just from what I've gathered. He was like, so here's what's going on. Y'all basically are all talking at each other, but nobody's listening to one another. And he was like, and if y'all don't figure out how to basically stop and listen to one another, none of y'all relationships is gonna work. And he turned to Zach, and he was like, Zach, as far as you, your dad wasn't around, and so what happened with you and Bryce was probably just a mixed communication. Basically, he was just like, you didn't have a dad, but you still formed relationships with men and around you, so that the way that you show appreciation could have come off to Bryce as you being interested, basically just talking about the different culture dynamics and things like that. And so it was just, while Zach was just being cool and affectionate like he is with his boys, Bryce, because of his upbringing, could have thought it was something different. And so he's literally just trying to break it down to Zach And Zach, you can definitely tell he still got this attitude and stuff like that. And so basically he was just like, so that's pretty much it. And then he goes to Angela. He goes, Angela, which this is really weird that he said this, because he goes, Angela, you are a beautiful woman. You confident, this and this. You got it going on basically. But then he goes, but you are very insecure. And I was just like, so you can't be confident and insecure, right? Like, basically she's been perpetrating a fraud, and that's what I think he was trying to communicate to her, is that you come off as a confident woman, but you on the inside you're really insecure. And basically he really just kind of went back into, they need to really talk to each other and everything, and say what you mean what you say. And then it kind of came off to Fatima, and Fatima was like, well, I say what I mean. And so Zach was like, no, you don't. And she was like, yes, I do. Like, and he was like, no, but you don't never say. She goes, yeah, I do. I just take time to process it. And he goes, that's the whole point. You don't never say nothing in real time. And she was like, well, that's because if I don't, I probably wouldn't be here. And he was like, yeah, because you run. And so she was like, Zach, just let Dr. Reed finish. And so Dr. Reed is just like, you know what, I am done. So, this has been a lot, basically. He was like, y'all just, I said what I said. Now y'all gonna have to figure out how y'all move forward. The only way is you as far as Zach and Bryce, he was just like, y'all just gonna have to learn to agree to disagree on what you guys both kind of thought was going on, and still move on, and just never let it happen again, And so basically he was like, with that being said, I'm out. And so he leaves. He thanks Fatima, and they go. The scene picks up where Bryce and Angela are basically at her house, and they're discussing everything. Let me just get them out of the way. They're discussing what happened at dinner, and Bryce is like, I'm sorry. And so she's like, that's fine. He was like, I really didn't mean to hurt your feelings by saying you a fetish. And she was like, no, you didn't hurt my feelings like that. You hurt my feelings when you say you like D. And he was like, well, I didn't really say that I like D like that. And so she was like, yeah, but whatever. So she asked for her key. And then he was like, oh, what about that dude that you was with? So here's the thing with Bryce. You don't get to question me about anybody that I was with or slept with or that he walked in, because he was asking about Sean. But you just was trying to kiss Zach, and basically that would have been cheating on her. You know what I'm saying? At this point, y'all not together. So anyway, that was pretty much them. Scene goes back over to Zach and Fatima's, and she's cleaning up, and Zach is sitting on the couch, and he's on the phone, just sitting in the living room. And Fatima's like, she cleaning up, so she picking up, the plates, and you can hear her kind of banging them together, because guess what? He ain't helping or nothing. He over there sitting on the couch, mad. And so she wipes down the counter, and his friends call and come play basketball, and he's like, yeah, whatever. So he gets off the phone. Fatima walks over and grabs the trash, and she's mad, right? She's stomping. And so Zach is like, all you had to do was ask me to do it. And so Fatima's like, I don't feel like arguing with you. And he was like, well, I gotta be an argument. All you had to do was ask. And so she was like, well, didn't you see that it needed to be done? And he was like, I don't feel like arguing with you, Fatima. And so she's like, yeah, that's what I said. And he was like, well, just go ahead and take it out. She was like, that's what I was about to do. And so he was like, whatever. And so she goes outside to take the trash out, and she calls Angela. Angela basically had told her that, she was still talking to Bryce. And so Fatima was like, all right, call me when he leave. The scene picks up where Fatima is downstairs. She actually took the trash out. Zach had went upstairs to change because he was going to go play basketball with his boys. So he's coming down the stairs. And Fatima's standing in front of the island, and he's looking at her. And so she was like, so we just not going to talk about this? And he was like, I don't feel like talking about this, Fatima. And so she was like, seriously? And he was like, I mean, what we got to talk about? You already had dude over here trying to diagnose me. And so she was like, Zach, listen, I was really just trying to help, because I'm desperate. And he was like, what you desperate about, Fatima? And so she was like, Zach, I can't tell you. If you don't really know what the problem is, basically is what she's saying, that, I can't tell you because she's already tried to tell him what's going on and he's not getting it. So he goes, anyway, like I said, I don't want to talk about this. Can I go play ball? And she's like, my mom want us to come over for dinner tomorrow, babe. And he's like, Fatima, I'm not going back over I'm not going over to your mom's house. I'm tired of getting tore down and stuff. And she's like, babe, please, she really wants us to. And he was like, so he was like, can I go? And he was like, can I just go play ball? And so she finally just throws her hands up and was like, yeah, go ahead. And so he was like, he leaves. So he leaves to go play basketball, and Fatima ends up calling Angela back, and basically they just talking about everything. And Fatima basically says that, you know, she really don't know what to do next, because if Dr. Reed can't help them, that she don't think her and Zach are gonna make it. And you know, Angela kind of was just telling her that she asked for her key back, you know, from Bryce. And so she was like, oh, and that's pretty much it for them. The scene picks up where Zach is at the basketball court, and he's playing basketball with Tony and Nate, and Tony and Nate. And, you know, they end up, you know, finishing the game. Apparently Zach wins. And so Nate is in his feelings. And so he kind of makes some comment, and Zach like, what you talking about? He was like, yeah, man, I'm just saying, like, you tripping. You hurt my feelings talking about you gonna kick my ass. And so Zach was like, and I meant that stuff. Like, and he was like, look, man, I'm just trying to tell you, like, something wrong. Like, you ain't been happy. And so Zach was like, listen, I am happy. Like, we just going through some stuff, but I'm happy. I still want to get married, you know. So then Nate was like, so what would you do if Connie came over to your house right now? And so Zach was just like, listen, man, like, I don't know. And so they was like, exactly. He's like, no, because I still want to get married. Like, we just going through some stuff. And so they was trying to get him to say that he wouldn't do nothing, but he just was like, I'm gonna go ahead and go. So he leaves. And he gets to the house. Fatima is in bed, you know, and she's looking over some books. She's reading, she's studying basically. And Zach comes in, and he just plops on the bed, and she looks at him, and she's like, Zach, and he's like, what? Because he's like taking his clothes off, and he all laying on the bed with his funky self. And so she's like, go get in the shower. You just came back from playing basketball. And he's like, man, like, whatever, Fatima, like, you know, just first, I am. And so she was like, go take a shower. He's like, I said I am. Like, just do what you're going to do first. And she's like, what are you talking about? He was like, come on, do what you need to do. I know you want to smell me and make sure that I was playing basketball. And she was like, Zach, I'm not about to be policing you. Like, if that's what you're going to do, then you're going to do it. And so he was like, whatever. And so they're talking, and somebody bangs on the door. There's this big, huge, like, popo knock at the door. And so they looking, and they like, well, who's knocking on the door like that this late? And so Fatima was like, knowing you, it could be anybody. So she gets up, and she, you know, puts her robe on, and Zach was like, what are you doing? She was like, Zach, I'm going to answer the door. And he was like, no, you're not. And she was like, what are you talking about? He was like, that's your problem. He was like, I'm the man. He was like, I'm gonna go answer the door. And so she was just like, whatever. And so somebody's banging on the door, and he's still just trying to argue with her. And she's like, Zach, if somebody is, it must be some kind of something going on, urgent or an emergency, if they knock on the door like that. And he's like, yeah, exactly. Which is why you don't need to go, which is why you need to stay here and let me go answer the door. And she was like, well, basically, because Zach is taking his time, and they still banging on the door. So he was like, that's your problem. You've been single so long that you don't know how to let a man be a man. And so she was like, I ain't never heard that before. And he was like, nah. He goes, because it's true. He goes, look, your tire get on flat. Like, so he's still on this flat tire thing, right? So he's like, your tire get on flat. Do you call your man? No, you try to fix it yourself. And so he goes, now somebody over here banging at the door, and you want to. So she was like, you know what, Zach, and you right. And they still banging on the door, and you still knocking. So he goes, well, she goes, and it got to be an emergency again, something like that. And he goes, yeah, it got to be. She was like, unless it's that B. And I believe she mean Karen, because remember, at this point, Karen been knocking on their door at all kind of times of the night and hours, showing up at their house and stuff. So anyway, they get downstairs, and Fatima goes first. And so Zach, you know, kind of grabs her arm and pulls her back. And she's like, you know, he was like, I'm going to get the door. He was like, because she goes, who is it? He goes, you see that? He was like, get back. And so he goes, who is it? And he goes, you see that? You hear the bass in my voice? So she was like, whatever. He didn't answer you either. So he goes over to the door, and he goes, who is it? And Fatima's behind him. And he goes, it's your brother. And so Zach opens the door, and he's like, Jeremiah, it's late, dude. Like, and he was like, yeah, take care of your mama. And so he bum rushes his way in, and Zach is looking, and it's his mom, and she just bruised up, her face all jacked up and everything. And that's pretty much the end of the episode. So let's just get into it now. So conversation. Let's see. Okay, so this episode, like I said, it kind of it moved fast, but it had some key points in it. But let's get into what was going on. So at this dinner, so Zach basically had an attitude because he was like making it seem like he told Fatima when he was talking about going play basketball, you already had this dude diagnosing me and everything like that. But let's keep it real. Like, Dr. Reed didn't say anything offensive to Zach. Like, Zach's still mad just at this point that Fatima didn't tell him about what's going on. And here's the thing. In all honesty, he has the right to be. But he is taking this like thing too fast. Like, too far. Zach is like spinning out of control for no reason. Yeah, you can be mad that she lied and told old dude to come over and try to talk to you. But let's keep it real. You actually did tell her in the earlier episode, I think it was 2, when he was outside, that he would get some help, even though we know he was, basically just lying to shut her up. So technically, she just did what you said you was going to do and try to get somebody over here. But he's mad just because he didn't know about it. And so, you know what I mean? Like, he's like, you tricked me and everything. But again, she told him, I'm desperate. And he's like, why you desperate? And again, the reason why she told him that I can't tell you, if you don't know, I can't tell you, is because she's been trying to tell Zach this entire time what the problem is. And he's not hearing her. Why? Because Zach is like for real on edge about all this. And here's the thing. This is all really still stemming from sex. Like, he mad that, she holding out on him. And then, he had the situation with his mom. And now like they really still just a couple of days in with no sex, by the way. And he just wigging out, and because he's still, again, projecting, assuming that just because she not having sex with him, that it's kind of what he was doing. When him and Karen was wilding out and not in a good place, he was out there doing his thing, and most likely so was Karen. And he's projecting that on Fatima, even though that's not who Fatima is. And once again, Fatima, she not turned on or nothing like that because she hurt. Like, you know what I mean? You talking about like, I'm on the elevator giving a dude a BJ, and now you talking about I'm meeting some random dude in the stairwell. Like, she was right when she told him last episode, you treat me like I'm some random B, because that is how he's treating her. He's not treating her like the woman that he knows that she is. And so, anyway, you know what I mean? Like I said, he's I feel like he's just taking this too far. Like, you could be mad that she invited somebody over, but all the standoffishness and like having an attitude, like he's bringing up everything, even in the bedroom when the door, somebody was pounding on the door. He went all the way back to the flat tire. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, this ain't recent stuff. You just projecting and pulling up everything that you can be mad about, but still not taking any accountability. So, again, it doesn't mean that Fatima should lie to him. I'm just saying that she does. It's a reason behind it. She is, because of the fact that he's not hearing truth from her. So she's like, I gotta go in this way. Why? Because she is desperate. She's in love with this man. She wants to be with this man, and he is not seeing what's going on, but she knows that she can't deal with this too much longer. So anyway, that's kind of what I'm seeing in the video, in the episode. You guys let me know what you think about the whole argument. Do you, once again, even if you don't agree that she should be lying, because I'm not agreeing that she should be lying, I'm just saying I understand, once again, why she is, the motivation of why she's doing what she's doing, and the route and the strategy that she's taking, because Zach is not hearing truth. He is not listening or even aware of his own emotions and actions, how he's treating her. Like, he's just missing all of it. And in all honesty, I can see why she's tired of it. It's like a lot of drama. She has absolutely put up with a lot of stuff, but she is also in love with this man. So she's not so willing to just drop the relationship. Just, she is trying to work through it the best way that she can. I think the other part for her is Zach wasn't trying. And so, like, when she asked him, we're not going to talk about this. And he was like, I don't want to talk about this, and so that's what I'm saying. Like, it was kind of like, so you don't see what's going on with us, and you're not willing to do anything to fight for us. You know what I'm saying? So I do see why she's, feeling desperate. You know what I'm saying? Because it's really, at this point, I'm the only one fighting for us. You know what I'm saying? And because of how the relationship progressed, they got a lot invested. I mean, you know, she in living with this man, she moved out of her house, you know what I'm saying? They're engaged and they really are in love with each other. But I do need to know that I'm not the only one that's putting in on the relationship and fighting for us. And at this point, Zach is not fighting for the relationship, but he is fighting Fatima. He's lashing out at her for every little thing. And so, anyway, that's pretty much it for the review. That's all I have. I honestly don't have too much more to say because I'm like, with the whole, you know, Bryce thing, like I said, you know, it was interesting how he was trying to like ask, you know, Angela about the, you know, Sean thing when you basically was trying to kiss Zach, you know what I mean? Like, when I tell you that I really don't necessarily like the Bryce character. I like how what he does for Zach as far as business and help him, but I don't like his actions, the way that he, you know, he is like he still tries to not take accountability as far as, you know, he's like, you know, Zach, you know, I thought he was coming on to me. You didn't think he was coming on to you because you asked him at the office and he told you he wasn't into you. And if he would have just left it alone right there, they would have been fine. That's not the reason why Zach is mad. Zach is mad because when you came at him, you asked him, he told you he wasn't, and then you didn't hear what he said. You tried to kiss him later on. So it wasn't like the initial misunderstanding where he was talking to him in the office and was like, you know, can I talk to you? Like, I think you were trying to come on. It wasn't the initial conversation where he was like, I'm into women, I'm not into you. It was the second conversation when they were standing in the lobby of their office and Bryce decided to try to kiss Zach anyway. That didn't have anything to do with Zach. And so I do understand why Zach is like, nah, dude, like I didn't do nothing to lead you on or nothing like that. That was all Bryce. And so with that being said, and then I guess Angela, let me say this with Angela, I kind of see what she was, I mean, you know, so it's like, you know, you wanted to have a 3-way, you know, and with another dude, but you know what I'm saying? But you, at the same time, you don't want to swing. So I kind of see where Bryce is kind of going with that too, because it's like, it's still somebody else in the bed. And then you want it to be another dude. Like, that's not really benefiting both of y'all. That is just really kind of benefiting one person. And if you want to have another dude, you know what I'm saying, that's more so you being serviced. But in all honesty, you know, it's still him in the bed with another person. And then she goes, well, you know, but you couldn't be rubbing up on him or anything like that. Well, I'm kind of trying to figure out what you think is going to happen in a 3-way, because you know what I'm saying, like, anyway, so it was just weird. That conversation with Angela, her and Bryce definitely have some double standards going on in their conversation, but at the end of the day, she's just not into him because of him being into men, and she should just left it that way instead of trying to like fix the conversation, because I feel like she was, and it just didn't work. So anyway, that's pretty much it for the conversation. Let me know what you guys think. Like I said, down in the comments. We'll get into the conversation like we do. Once again, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.